Well, thank you for all coming. I want to thank Warwick's for inviting me here, because this is a bookstore that's so supportive to readers and writers. And I think, first of all, authors are book lovers first, and we still savor the feel of a physical book in our hand. We love the feel of the paper and the smell of the ink, and it's kind of an addictive thing. But we also know that stores like Warwick's put our books into the hands of readers, and that's so important now. Now we have e-books, but we still like the good physical books. Right. Warwick's has hosted some of my favorite Southern authors. Catherine Stockett was here. She talked about the help. But unlike some of the Southern authors, I was born here in San Diego, and actually just a few blocks from here. I was born at Scripps Hospital down on Prospect Street. Oh. So, but my grandparents came to San Diego in the 1940s from Alabama via Richmond, Virginia. And I think I spent a lot of time in their household growing up, listening to my grandfather's stories about his boyhood in Decatur, Alabama, and then in the kitchen with my grandmother while she cooked. So I heard stories all around, and I think their Southern mindset and their values just kind of rubbed off on me. Their love of the language, their turns of phrase, and when I got to write my third novel, which is titled Fairhope, was set in Texas, it just all my Southernisms kind of came out, and I think I finally found my voice at that point. I think that writing is an apprenticeship to one's voice. As readers, we have our favorite authors, and I think our favorite authors' voices resonate with us. And by resonate, I mean that their worldview kind of aligns with ours. And you can't, when you first start writing, you might try to write like another author that you happen to admire, but you really have to get down to the bone and get to what really resonates with you. And you can only be you. You can't be the next Harper Lee or the next John Grisham. So it took me to my third manuscript to get to that point. And by the time I got to writing Salton Roses, which was the seventh one, my voice I felt very comfortable with my Southern voice and who I was. The idea for Salton Roses came to me when I was selling my father's estate. He had 3 wives, and many marriages. So there was a lot of infighting, and it was kind of a big mess. And after 2 years of squabbles, I just started thinking about how we value money and how we value people. And that kind of led to what if. Like, what if a young woman discovered that she was someone else? Someone who had the complete opposite beginnings. A Southern girl who was a Yankee. A poor girl who was in fact wealthy. How would she come to terms with her new identity? And that was the premise for Salton Roses. The book Salton Roses is set in Shady Grove, Alabama in the 1990s. There are 3 Shady Groves actually in Alabama. Mine will be the 4th one, I think, because I haven't been to any of them, but when I looked on the map, I liked the name, and then I noticed there were 3, and I thought, well, why not? So they can all those different towns can argue over who actually has the rights to the town in the story. But anyway, Salton Roses tells the story of Gracie Calloway, a girl who was left on a doorstep of 2 army buddies, Ben Calloway and Artie Dubois. And along with baby Gracie was left a note from Ben's wayward niece, Rita, asking Ben to mind her for a spell. And everyone, including Gracie, assumed that she was Rita's child, her love child or the baby. And as Gracie grows up, she shoulders Rita's reputation along with her own dubious beginnings. So, it really affected who she was. She was raised by Ben and Artie, but with Alice, which is Ben's next door wife. He's kind of an estranged wife. She moved next door, but she still has a big influence in Gracie's life. And Gracie is not the typical small town girl. She's a tomboy. She plays baseball, and she's very good at it. And she's intimidated most of the young potential suitors in the town because she can pitch and hit a ball better than almost any of the other men, so they kind of stay away from her. But she's also naive, and she's fiercely loyal to the ones that she loves. And the one thing she values above all else is truthfulness. And this is one thing that causes her some problems in the story, or she has to come to terms with anyway. The story opens on the eve of Gracie's 25th birthday. And it's actually the anniversary of her arrival on the doorstep. So she's not terribly excited about celebrating that event. So Gracie is dawdling at the market where she works as a bookkeeper. It's a safe place where she can fly under the radar of the town busybodies. She kind of hangs out in the back room, and nobody bothers her there, and she's happy with that. She's very content with her life. She's making enough money to pay her bills and live the life she wants to, and no one gives her any trouble. So as each passing birthday comes, it's just another reminder that Rita never came back for her, and she doesn't want it. She knows that Alice is at home preparing her birthday celebration, and she doesn't want to go. And I want to read you just the opening of the book so you can kind of get a feel for Gracie. Gracie Lynne Calloway began her small life in Shady Grove, Alabama, fast asleep in a coal bucket on the front porch of 1854 Peachtree Lane. At 8 a.m., she was carried in with the morning paper and a short note. Uncle Ben, you always said I'd give the devil a run for his Bible. I guess you were right. I remember how you liked babies. Could you mind her for a spell? I know you two will get along just fine. If Auntie Alice says you don't know nothing about raising children, tell her I said you are better than any mama I know. Say a prayer for me, Rita. And between the ham and eggs and 2 pots of coffee, she was given her name. She had the beautiful, glamorous Grace Kelly to thank for the first part, her Uncle Ben to thank for the last, and Rita to thank for the coal bucket. And Gracie liked her name well enough, but she would gladly have traded the coal bucket for a flesh and blood mother. Not that her uncles Ben and Artie hadn't done a fine job of raising her. Gracie could pitch or hit a baseball better than most guys she knew, and with Aunt Alice's well-meaning interference from next door, she could set a table with edible food, but she knew better than to advertise the fact. At Gracie's advanced years, being a good cook was the equivalent of being a marked target. And that could only lead to one thing, marriage. Something Alice risked her knees in prayer for every night. Alice was Ben's next-door wife. She said things were more peaceful with her and Ben under separate roofs. Peaceful or not, living apart hadn't produced any new Calloways, and Alice let it be known that all her hopes had settled on Gracie. And with each passing year, since Gracie's 18th birthday, Alice's hopes had become an unfettered war. Today was the milestone birthday for Gracie, number 25, and once again Alice would be working her years toward the cause. In general, birthdays were something Gracie approached with caution. She couldn't remember one that didn't make her stomach go funny. And when it came right down to it, the date they'd earmarked for her birthday was the day that she'd been abandoned on Ben's porch. No one had ever thought to change it, since her real birthday was a mystery to everyone but Rita. And being cast off by the one person who should love you above all others was hardly a cause for celebration in Gracie's mind. Alice would be poking the candles into her cake right about now and shooing Uncle Ben away from the leftover icing. But Gracie was in no hurry to endure another reminder of her unceremonious arrival in Shady Grove. And what Gracie doesn't know is that her life is about to take a real sharp turn. And Artie, her mentor, is pretty much her sounding board throughout her life. Artie had been home with her while her Ben and Alice worked during the daytime, and he was a musician, so he worked at night, and he pretty much raised her, and they see eye to eye a lot. And he's on her way to meet her and try to coax her home because he knows that there's something that he hasn't prepared her for. He feels a little bit guilty for this because he thinks that he's sheltered her a little too much, and he wants to push her out of the nest. So I was going to read you a little bit of Artie so you can get the feeling for their relationship. Let's see. Gracie ventured one last peek through the window, thinking she must have dreamed the whole exchange, and sure enough, Darla had disappeared, but Artie rounded the corner and was making his way in her direction. He had a slight hitch to his gait, a war injury from the time he and Ben served in Korea, and today he moved slower than usual, pausing as he struggled to get air into his tarred lungs. Gracie swallowed her concern and unlatched the door. "Alice chased you out of the house?" Artie hobbled through the doorway. "You mean that hurricane in the kitchen? That bad, huh? Pink icing. I'm supposed to get sprinkles to match. I sure hope you got pink or she won't let me back in the house." And Gracie closed the door and cut a path down the baking aisle. She plucked a tiny bottle off the shelf and handed it to Artie. "Pink, huh? For your female side, the one that don't play ball." And Alice said to put it on her account like she's one of them big dog celebrities she's always yammering on about. And Alice was a self-appointed balance in Gracie's life. She took it as her heavenly duty to outweigh her male counterparts, Ben and Artie. And now that Gracie had risen to the role of star pitcher on the Grave Gators women's baseball team, Alice embraced her role with a fervor that exceeded her devotion to the Lord. And Gracie just wished she'd find another more worthy victim to help into everlasting happiness. Artie's footsteps kept pace with her as she headed toward the office in the back corner of the market. "If I know Alice, she wouldn't trust anyone but herself to get pink sprinkles. You blackmailed her into giving you the job, didn't you? I knowed you was down here, and Alice knowed that I was the only one who could ferret you out." I'm not hiding, I'm working." Gracie kept moving, thankful that Artie couldn't see her face. She needed a couple more minutes to put a lead bucket over her thoughts before he turned his X-ray vision on. Artie huffed and puffed at her heels. "You think 25 was the ugly birthday. Wait till you get as old as me. Folks down at the DMV don't want to take your picture no more. Next thing you know, they're handing you a bus pass, and then that's when you buy yourself a spot in the big man's parking lot." It wasn't the first time Artie had mentioned dying. Gracie glanced over her shoulder and watched him take a shaky breath as she swallowed her fear and scolding on the tip of her tongue. "You know darn well that's not what's eating me. What I know is it ain't worms, but it might as well be. This dark hole ain't no place for you to spend the rest of your life." And Gracie shimmied past the pallet of dog food and into her office, and then took a seat behind it. "You never said boo about my job before. It's not so bad. It pays the bills, and nobody bothers me. That's just it. Nobody's ever going to bother you here. You're getting too bossy. Somebody with more kick needs to take you down a notch once in a while. I'm getting too old for the job. Stop it, you hear. I don't want to listen to another word about you getting old. You know what I think?" And Artie planted himself in the chair across from her. "I sure do, but you're going to tell me anyway, so have at it. I think Alice has been slipping mind-altering drugs into your tea, 'cause I swear I hear Alice echo ringing inside your skull. Sounds like a church bells to me." "What you hear, Gracie Lynne, is your birthday clock ticking. I know the difference between a tick and a traitor's belly aching. I see the marriage statistics bandied around every day in the tabloids and on the front checkout counter. Fact is, I consider myself lucky. I can dump my shiftless man and nobody cares. You ain't got a man." And Artie rapped his cane on the top of her desk. And Gracie glared at him and jutted out her chin. "I'm just saying if I had one, that's all. 3 years ago, Ben and Alice pooled their money and bought me that fancy hope chest. And last year I got a set of spoons. So this year I figured it'll be forks. Next year it'll be knives. By the time I'm 30, I'll be able to set a table. Unless you shoehorn some poor fool into marrying me and in the anticipation altogether. They're saving the knives for last, after you hook yourself with somebody. Don't want you to scare him off." And Gracie met Artie's steady gaze. "I suspected as much." And a silver bow lifted over his right eye. "You got any particular fool in mind? And don't say Skip Evers, 'cause I know you better than that." Skippy could qualify as lots of things. Best friend, even first kiss material, but never husband. And despite the fact that they'd grown up in the same sandbox, the last thing she figured to hear from Artie was a question about her love life. He was here for a reason, and she was pretty sure matchmaker wasn't it. And Gracie eyed him suspiciously over the top of her desk. I figure Santa Claus ought to fit the bill. He works out of town, and he's only got the one red suit. I won't be bothered with much laundry. Artie put on his sorry face. That's what I thought. You got your yearly case of my mama don't love me blues. You're wrong. I gave up on Rita a long time ago. I'm just working myself up to the excitement over the forks, that's all. So that's kind of their relationship. It goes like that a lot, their back and forth dialogue. The next scene, Gracie arrives home, and by the time the birthday party is over, Gracie has discovered that she's the kidnapped daughter of a New England financier, and she's inherited a huge fortune. And I just want you to entertain the idea for what if your new fortune threatened to separate you from all that you loved, the people who raised you, the town you'd grown up in. If all your life you've been trying to fit in, and you finally achieve that goal, and then boom, everything changes. And that's pretty much what happens to Gracie Calloway. Gracie's first reaction is disbelief. And then the press show up, and then she starts to understand, oh, okay, this is real. I'm going to have to deal with this. But then she just thinks, well, I'm just going to push it away. I'm not going to accept the money. But then she realizes that even if she doesn't take the money, her life has changed forever. She's now someone's child. She's a kidnapped child who was thought to be dead. So the news, are going to make a field day out of this. So I think I was kind of trying to play the devil's advocate here. I was trying to put her in a situation where she would have to make some really tough choices about money and family. And there's just one very short paragraph I wanted to read that kind of illustrates her inner conflict. It's the last one here. Gracie's good fortune, as Alice called it, was further complicated by the fact that she wasn't just Jane Doe who'd made good on a weekly lottery pool. She had another history that guaranteed a crowd. She was somebody's kidnapped baby, and if she knew anything about the general population, she knew they craved a juicy story where the underdog wins. Such things didn't happen all that often in real life. Thanks to Alice's subscription to People magazine, she'd already figured out that she would be a prime target for a made-for-TV movie, some screenwriter's $1 million ticket to fame and fortune. And then there was the fact that no one seemed to be considering her feelings on the matter. Had her father even thought of her longer than the moment it took him to sign a piece of paper condemning her to a public spectacle? If he'd known about her, why hadn't he come to find her? She knew the answer without asking, because he was embarrassed by her. It was the story of her life. First Rita, and now her daddy. So she's really have a hard time accepting this, because she realizes that her father knew that she was alive and he never came to claim her, and it just makes it very hard for her. It's another kind of emotional thing. So I think in many ways Salton Roses is a coming-of-age story, and with a lot of humor in it, underneath the serious side. But I want to make a few comments about writing in general. Writing is a kind of a mysterious endeavor, and consciously you start with the premise of a novel, and then the magic happens. The characters come to life, and they say and do things that you never expected. I had no idea that Gracie played baseball until I actually got into the story, and she told me that herself. I think Artie had something to do with that, but so I had to go do a lot of research on baseball because I didn't know enough about it. So much of what we writers envision comes from our subconscious, and sometimes it feels like we are taking dictation. Those are the good days. I tend to see stories or pictures in my head. I'm a visual artist by training, so I see it and then I just record it, and then I have to go back and edit later. But the magic is what keeps us coming back again and again, because we actually want to know what the story's going to come out like. Stephen King said in his book on writing, I am not my novel's creator, but its first reader. And that is really true, because when you finish a novel, you know, it's kind of an amazing thing. You know, there's so much in there that you never even thought of until it came out through your characters. I think even for writers who outline heavily, I think this holds true. If your story is honest, your characters will have a say in the outcome of the story. And then your editor will have her say. Jennifer Cruzy is one of my mentors, and she said that reading is a collaborative act. Our stories are not complete until the reader picks up the book and reads it. The readers bring their own experiences to the story and interpret the story in their own way. Several readers can read the same book, and it'll be a different book for each reader, depending on the experiences that you bring to that book. So I'll be happy to answer any questions about Salton Roses or just writing in general. Daddy?
Well, how long did it take you to write this from start to finish?
Well, there were a lot of revisions along the
Right,
way. It usually
right.
takes me about 6 months
6 months?
when I'm writing full time to write a first draft, but then the revisions. This
Okay.
book I sold in 2007, and I had 2 different editors working on it different times, and I did 3 revisions on the book, so that was almost a period of 3 years.
Wow.
And I had revised it several times before that
Wow.
too.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
What does the Salton Roses mean?
Oh.
Those who don't know.
yeah, my editor, my first editor had kind of latched onto a little line in the story. It was kind of a throwaway line. There's a feud going on between 2 women in town, and they're salting each other's pouring table salt on the roses to kill them. And so she thought that sounded like a quirky title. So originally the title was called Waltzing with Alligators. It referred to the relatives and stuff, but I guess she thought that would work better. So yeah, you like Salton Roses? Yeah, it's grown on me. It really
I
has.
like the other
Yeah.
one too.
Yeah, I did too.
Will there be another book with that name?
We'll never know.
You never know.
Are you in the middle of writing another book?
Yes, I've actually finished the first draft of another book. It's called The Princess of Possum Hollow, and it's set in Louisiana. It's kind of a southern gothic mystery novel.
You like to
Yes.
write mysteries?
I do, I really do. It makes it more interesting for me. It's very much like this one too.
Well,
Yeah.
the author always knows how it's going to end.
How which is
the mystery's going to end.
yeah, you don't know until you get to the end. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know until I get to the end.
That's what I want to
yeah.
know. You don't know
Not
who the
the
killer
whole.
will be.
No, well, sometimes I know that, but not always. Sometimes
No.
it surprises me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah.
I like how you said when you're writing it's your consciousness that speaks to you.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do to stimulate when you're more in that quiet space looking for stimulation? Is there a certain place you go to where you live or to stimulate the process
No.
when you don't hear from your consciousness?
I have to kind of get into the character's skin,
Uh-huh.
and I have to actually kind of put myself in their head,
Mm.
and then I try to look through their eyes and see what they see. And sometimes it takes, a couple false starts in a scene. I write 3/4 a page, and then I kind of, you've really got to get into that character's skin. You have to be able to walk around and feel and touch, and then you have to go back and edit some of that stuff out because it's too much detail. But yeah, that's how I do it. Question?
Would you mind talking a little bit about your southern roots?
Oh, well, 2 of my relatives are here. my aunt is here. My grandparents came from Alabama, and it was interesting because when I wrote my 3rd novel, I was telling my aunt Nita about that I was writing a story set in Texas, and she said, "Oh, well, your great-grandmother was from Texas, but she had passed away when my grandmother was only 6 years old, so none of us ever knew her." And it turned out that I was writing a story set in the area where she had lived, and then because she didn't tell me this till after I'd written most of the book, and then I found out that my character names were place names on the map.
Oh my God.
And then when I didn't, and then I got very interested in my southern genealogy. She gave me a picture of my great grandmother, and she looked very much like me, and it freaked my kids out. I set it on the dining room table, and they kind of walked around it very carefully for about 3 weeks. They called her the spooky lady. And then I was doing genealogy research, and I found one of my characters' names, first and last, Lizzie Mayfield, on a gravestone in the town not far from where my great-grandmother lived, and that was really spooky too. So I thought maybe this is what I meant to do, meant to write this. So yeah, and then I started to get very interested in my Southern genealogy. My grandfather was from Alabama, so all of our family is back on that side.
Were they involved in the Civil War?
Oh yes, yes. In fact, some of my great-grandmother's, I guess it would be her grandfather was in the Confederate, even from Texas where they lived, in the Confederate States. Yeah.
Laurie, I'm just amazed at how you picked up on the Southern accent so well in your dialect.
Well, my
really
kids
felt
tell me
like
when I
I'm
get
in the
tired
South.
that it really kind of comes out without me even realizing it. That it they'll say, "Oh, there you go again." So yeah, even Sarah, my youngest daughter, sometimes I can hear it in her speech, and I think it's because she's listened to me for some reason. Anyway,
Are you planning to go to the South? Do you have any
I hope
trips
so.
planned?
well, no, I was invited to Nashville, but I'll have to wait until the end of the school year, probably.
Well, is there a particular place that you write? Like, you're in the studio painting. I mean, is there a place that you write, or is it wherever
You've been to our house.
I have. Or is it
I live in a
where
small
you,
house.
where you can get away from the kids and the husband? I mean, how
It's been really hard since we moved to a smaller home, and I don't have a dedicated space. It's right beside my bed, and I have a laptop and a desktop, so it's hard. I have to kind of hide out sometimes, yeah. But I used to have a room. Yeah, and I do need total quiet. I mean, some people can work with noise or music. I have to have total silence when I'm writing.
Is it morning? Are you morning or?
I am a morning writer, but now that I have a job, I don't get to do that except on the weekends. So yeah, it's been tough.
Get to push
The last 3 years, yeah. Yeah, I do. I learned to write on the weekends or in the afternoons.
And you're writing
Yes,
And raising
for
a
the last 3
family.
years. But
How old are your children?
Yeah, how old
I have a 17-year-old, a 23-year-old, and just turned 26 when he's 26. Yeah.
So you have one left at home.
You have one left at home.
Yeah.
Well, two. There's two at home right now. Yeah. Yeah.
They don't live at home.
Two of them
Yeah,
live at
two of
home.
them.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So you take care of a house and cooking and all that stuff and have a job
She
and
works
write
She writes while
Yeah.
you are.
and you're still sane.
And I have to say, if I may, she is a beautiful, I'm a special ed teacher with moderate to severe, and she works with me, and she's an amazing teacher with a severely disabled,
Yeah.
amazing artist. And that's just so special, it just speaks to her character.
Well, I enjoy that. Mission Hills High School in San Marcos. Yeah, for the last 3 years. Before that, I've been writing for about 15 years. Yeah, so I've written about 9 or 10 manuscripts, but this was the first one I had sold. So.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, I was just wondering, what do you think it is about Southern culture that lends itself to such great characters? Because it really seems like the best characters of
Yeah,
American
I think part of it's their sense of family. They're very family oriented, and even if your family members are a little bit odd, they still kind of embrace their family, and I think that's really what makes them. And I think they're very open. Their hospitality is just such that they embrace even strangers. If somebody who's Southern finds out that you have even a little bit of blood in you that might possibly be related to them, then it's just like, you're part of the family. I actually, as I was doing my genealogy research online, I found a man who is the cousin of, let's see, he's my great-grandmother's nephew. And I found a wealth of photographs and all kinds of family history stuff from him. It was amazing. I mean, they lived in a little tiny town with only 1,000 people, but they had a great website, and this man and I connected. He lives in Texas, and he just gave me all these pictures. I have pictures of my great-grandmother when she was only 9 years old now, so it's
good.
really been kind of a neat experience.
Unbelievable.
And I've been back to that town to see the gravestones and see where they lived and everything. So it was
What's the town like now? Is it small?
it's very small, yeah. It's called Bells, Texas. It's near Sherman, kind of near the Oklahoma border. Yeah. So I want to thank you for coming here tonight and
Yeah.
supporting me.
Are you just starting to go around and speak?
um,
Okay.
yeah, this is my first
This is your
appearance here.
first?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. And when did you complete the book?
Well,
Or
about
when
a
did it
year
come
ago.
out?
It takes
When did
about a
it come
year.
out?
It came out on November 30th.
November 30th,
So it takes
okay.
about a year from the time that you
Right.
turn it in to the time they
Wow,
publish
it takes
it.
that long.
So, yeah, because you have to go through the editing process and then they have to come up with a cover and
Do you have
do all
your
the
own
marketing.
editor? Do you have an editor?
Yes, I do have an editor at HarperCollins.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it's been
That's
quite an adventure.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing